Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Iceberg podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com, a proud affiliate of the Hockey News. I'm your host, Nick Brlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat here on this trade deadline week, the first time the Penguins are concrete sellers in what feels like 30 years, but it's obviously been less than that. Basically, the entirety of Sidney Crosby's career, this is the first time that you've seen a list of players that could possibly all be gone by the end of this week, and it could start as early as 2 minutes from now. We don't know. It's going to be an insane couple of days leading up to the NHL's trade deadline. Horwat, are you expecting a very crazy week? Because I'm expecting a little bit of craziness throughout the week, not just on Friday.
I am. I'm actually surprised it didn't start yesterday. It was a perfect day to sort of get the ball rolling, to kick things off. Not only were they, a day removed from just 3 tough losses, but there was nothing going on. There was no practice. There was no no other game. It was just the perfect time to pull something off, maybe finally announce something. So I'm a little more surprised that nothing happened during the day Monday, which only makes me think nothing much will happen today. Game day. Game days are usually a little different. They usually don't involve trades, at least from what I remember. And then Wednesday is another complete day off. Maybe they're back on the wagon then. So I'd expect quite a bit of action between now and Friday. I think it's going to be one of those hectic weeks.
Yeah, you mentioned those 3 disastrous losses over the weekend for the Penguins, 3-game losing streak to end their Pacific Northwest road trip. And that's where we're going to start today. I want to ask you, what was your biggest takeaway from this road trip for the Penguins? They start with that massive victory over the Vancouver Canucks, and then they go on to lose 2-0 to Seattle. They go on to lose 4-3 in epic fashion against the Calgary Flames. And then Sunday night was just a slaughter at the hands of the Edmonton Oilers. What was your biggest takeaway from that 3-game trip out west for the Penguins?
Just that the season's over. Just that the season is wrapped up. You can put a bow on it and call it in for the Penguins. And that's, this week is going to be focused on maybe gaining a couple of points in the Metro, maybe not finishing as closer to Columbus than playoff spot, maybe gaining some sort of momentum. But this week's going to be focused on finding deals, finding trades, and selling the parts and the bits and the pieces. And what this weekend showed to me, at least, is that this season is, in the books. It's wrapped up for the season's Penguins. Were they? I can't even remember. Were they even from game 1? I know they lost game 1 to Chicago. Were they ever in a playoff spot?
By standings points, no. By points percentage, yes, they had been at one point, and that was after their run 10-3-3 through the month of December. They were in there by points percentage. They were also, I think, a point or 2 out as far as actual standings points are concerned, but they've always had those games in hand. Basically seems like that's been the phrase that we've used the most this season. But they've been in or close to it, but they've never been really secured in the top 3 of the Metro. They've never been a team that was considered to be, safely in a playoff spot at any point this season. No.
Yeah, they started off this season the same way last season ended. A loss to the Chicago Blackhawks on home ice. And I don't want to say that it started then, but I feel like my thoughts on that loss to Chicago were, oh boy, strap in.
That was the first sense that this team is a lot more similar to last year's team than the players on the roster would care to make you think.
Yeah, so I'd have to go back and listen to our episode, but I remember not having high hopes after that game, and everything that has happened since is kind of only driven that point home a little more. And ironically, still getting a great effort from Crosby. Obviously, you're always going to. The goaltending has woken up in a big way, but I don't know. This team just, for whatever reason, doesn't have it, period.
My biggest takeaway from the road trip is that the Penguins, for the 3rd straight offseason, need to restructure their defense. I would argue that they didn't need to restructure their defense in 2022, but they did nonetheless. They restructured it last offseason. They're going to have to do it again this offseason because this would when you look at this defense, it's horrible. I mean, like you mentioned, the Penguins goaltending has woken up in a big way. If it hadn't, we'd be talking about 20% chance at Macklin Celebrini. I don't remember how all the draft percentages work, but they'd be in the bottom, in the basement of the Eastern Conference, even more so than they are right now, if it wasn't for the work of Tristan Jarry and Alex Nedeljkovic, because this defense has just not been good. You look back at 2022, the Penguins traded Marino, traded Matheson, bring in Petrie and Ruda. We all agree that was the wrong course of action. Then you look at last year, because they had the 21st ranked team and expected goals against per 60 minutes, according to MoneyPuck.com last season. They restructured the defense again. They signed Graves long-term. They trade for Erik Karlsson. They get rid of Petrie and Ruda, pull the plug on them after 1 year. They restructure the defense, and now you look at where they're at. As of right now, they rank 25th in expected goals against per 60 minutes. So they restructured all of this, added more salary cap to the blue line, and they're worse defensively. And they're not that much better off offensively. Yes, Erik Karlsson is better offensively than anybody the Penguins had on their roster last season as far as from the blue line. But the defense is so much worse that it doesn't make up for it. When you look at defense pairs specifically for the Penguins, according to Money Puck again, that are in the top 100 of goals against per 60 minutes, there's 2 defense pairings. Joseph and Ruhwedel are 25th, which they've only played 100 minutes together, but they're 25th in expected goals against per 60 minutes. And Pettersson and Letang are 96th. Outside of that, nobody else from the Penguins are in the top 100 defense pairs as far as, I think, pairings that have played at least 100 minutes together. So Joseph Ruhwedel just meets that bar on the bottom. But that's just showing you that none of these defense pairs are working at a high level. And as far as the entire team is concerned, it's just not been good from day one. Like you mentioned in that Blackhawks game, we were already having discussions of, man, Ryan Graves looked really bad in that debut. But the hope was, all right, it was his debut with a new team. He's going to get better as the season's gone on. And here we are right up to the trade deadline. Graves is on the third pairing. You look at the top 4. You have P.O. Joseph, who should not be a top 4 defenseman in the NHL this season, playing top pairing minutes with Chris Letang. And you look at the entire blue line as a whole and say, man, this needs restructured once again. And that, to me, was made very, very evident. Not just the 6-goal outburst against Edmonton, because Edmonton's they're going to do that to teams, but just the entire road trip as a whole. You look at that, and that's the one thing that stood out to me the most is, man, they really need to fix this defense this offseason. It's not the only hole they need to fix, but it is certainly a major, major issue going forward for Kyle Dubas and the Penguins.
It is. And when it comes to the defense, there are no words. I think, again, you kind of look at that left side and go, here are the issues. The right side has been fine. Chris Letang's been good. And by the way, left side does not include Marcus Pettersson. But Chris Letang has been good. Erik Karlsson has been good, despite what a lot of people want to say. I'm so confused at how Twitter feels about it, because every other tweet is here's how good he is, here's how bad he is, here's how good he is, here's how bad he is. Don't care. I think he's, at least in my opinion, I think he's been a good player. Everyone talking about the $11.5 million contract. I say pump the brakes. He's making 10 here, or 10 against the cap here. Let's not act like his entire contract is here. And then, that Chad Ruhwedel's just been steady as ever, as always. He's the Chad Ruhwedeliest that he's ever been this year. But then that left side was a revolving door for a while. There was John Ludwig sliding in there, Ryan Shea. P.O. Joseph was in and out of the lineup before finding this consistency on the first line. So there's a mess to be fixed down there already. I don't know who you fill it in with. And when it comes to, I mean, this team is selling, yes, but they want to be ready to go back at it next year. There's no doubt about that. So you have to find guys that can perform next year or even later this year into next year. So I don't know who's a part of that, because Pettersson is a guy you want to keep, likely. Ryan Graves is going to be impossible to move. P.O. Joseph might be easy to move, but then who do you replace him with? Does John Ludwig stick around? Does Ryan,
and you replace P.O. Joseph with anybody. Let's be completely honest about that one.
Yeah. But then it's a matter of filling in the holes and what names are coming in. We'll see. No one envies the job Kyle Dubas has to do. None of this is also on him, by the way. I
wouldn't say none, but a lot of it isn't. he stepped into a pretty crappy situation, but I mean, some of his moves have been very good this year. Look at, Eller, Lars, but there have also been some misses, like $27 million to Ryan Graves, who's, I think, the impetus of all of this discussion.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to feed off of here, is that almost none of this defense for sure is on him. He thought Ryan Graves was going to be a good piece. I think we all did, or at least me and you did, thought that was going to be a solid addition. Because Marcus Pettersson's been a good deal. We thought P.O. Joseph might take a step forward. I think we had faith in Ryan Shea for a little bit. Then John Ludwig ended up being a nice little, diamond in the rough almost. So, because Erik Karlsson ended up working out. Who else did Kyle Dubas really add to this defense?
Yeah.
So the defense isn't on him that much at all, but it's still a mess.
Yeah, and it's not going to be easy to fix either. I just think that it's something that, should be on the to-do. It should be on the old to-do for Kyle Dubas this summer, is fix that defense, maybe restructure that defense, because right now you have an expensive defenseman that can't play in the top four because he doesn't fit with your right shot defenseman. You have a best defensive defenseman that can only play with one other person, and both of the guys on the right side need him to play with him, and you have nobody else to play. If Pettersson is with Letang, you have nobody to play with Karlsson. If Pettersson's with Karlsson, you have nobody to play with Letang. And P.O. Joseph has had his moments this season, but I think we can all agree that he is far from a player that should be getting consistent minutes week over week in that role. And when you look at it, I think at the end of the day, one of Erik Karlsson or Ryan Graves has to go. And it's not going to be Erik Karlsson. It just isn't. $10 million is hard to move. Full no move clause is harder to move. And Ryan Graves, I don't know if they're going to have to eat salary cap. I'm always against that, especially when you're already retaining on Jeff Petrie for next year. You're retaining a little bit from the buyout of Jack Johnson still for next year. To retain for a 5-year period, I know the salary cap is going to go up, but that might be what they have to eat. He might have to end up doing that simply because that might be the only way to unlock somewhat of that defense. That might be the only way to restructure that defense, because I don't see a way that you can do it with Ryan Graves on the left side as a third pairing defenseman. And there's no way that you really want him to be anything higher than that when the two guys on the right side are Letang and Erik Karlsson. So it's a difficult situation that Kyle Dubas finds himself in. You said it perfectly. Nobody envies the position that Kyle Dubas is in, but hey, that's what he signed up for. That's why he got a 7-year contract. That's why he probably makes a whole heck of a lot of money. I think he makes $8 million or something like that. I'd have to go back and look at the actual figures and where it came out from, but he certainly makes enough money to be able to have these headaches and deal with these headaches and be expected to make the team better over time. But those were our biggest takeaways from the road trip. When we come back after this break, Penguins placed a struggling forward on waivers. We'll talk about who that is and if you can expect to see him back at the NHL anytime soon. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the Tip of the Iceberg podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. The Penguins did have one roster move to make on Monday, despite it not being a busy day in the trade market for Kyle Dubas and company. They placed forward Matthew Phillips on waivers yesterday, still awaiting to hear if he clears today, and will subsequently probably be sent down to Wilkes-Barre if he does clear. He played 3 games with the Penguins after being claimed from the Washington Capitals. 0 points in those performances, and clearly not performing well enough to stay in the lineup, as he was healthy scratched for the most recent 5 games before being placed on waivers. Horwat, what were your thoughts on Matthew Phillips' short tenure here before being placed on waivers yesterday?
Man, nothing much to read, eh?
No.
He didn't necessarily go for public skates in 3 games, but he also didn't really provide much. And I said this before in one of the recordings that we did, he knows he's an undersized forward. He tries to keep his feet moving as much as possible, and he does have some speed to him. But he's small enough to the point where big guys just push him to push him. And I saw it in the Islanders game specifically whenever he was in there. I forget, just those big defensemen that they have, they just, whenever they were next to him, they just went, oh, here's a fun little kid that I kind of push over and move along with my day. Not that he fell over, but that little push can just affect so much of the game that he got abused for his size. And I didn't think it was a totally terrible pickup in the first place. But
it costs you nothing.
Yeah, it costs you nothing. You don't hate the idea of just adding in for, other struggling forwards. Why not give it throw anything against the wall, see what sticks. Give this one a shot. In his 3-game sample size, nothing much really clicked. I mean, there was a point where he was playing next to Evgeny Malkin. So, things just weren't going to work out for him. You're saying he'll be sent to the AHL. I think he'll be sent to the AHL if he clears, sent to Wilkes-Barre if Brian Rust is coming back tonight, which is the only way I see it happening right away. I mean, we saw it last year. If he doesn't get claimed, he could still play. If anything, though, let's say he clears, the Penguins have that flexibility now to really, move him up and down for, what is it, a month? They have that
30 days, or I think 30 days at the NHL level, or 10 games.
Yeah. So they have that flexibility, at least through the month of March, to sort of fly him back and forth as much as they need to. And with the trade deadline coming up, who knows where he might end up landing. Maybe there's a couple of paper transactions that happened with him while this week gets situated. So unless Rust is ready to go today, I honestly don't know if I'd expect Phillips to be sent down, because there could be a lot of roster spots opening up.
There could be, but here's the thing. He can't make the lineup right now. He's been a healthy scratch the last 5 games, and both Brian Rust and Jake Gensel are out injured. Let's not forget Matt Nieto is also out injured, and we would expect that Nieto would get a roster spot over Phillips if it was a 1v1 proposition for Mike Sullivan. But also, Jesse Puljujarvi hasn't been in the lineup, and you would expect that he gets a jersey over Matt Phillips on most nights. And here's the thing as well. I liked the idea of giving him an opportunity. He obviously has great offensive upside, especially at the American Hockey League level, but I liked giving him the opportunity in the top 6 for a game or two. But I think you understand, and you mentioned it perfectly, he gets knocked off pucks way too easily, and that's of no fault of his own. The guy is small. You can't do anything about that. I'm practically the same height and weight. I understand. You can't do anything about that. But when you're playing on a line with Evgeny Malkin, I think we've seen what he needs. He needs his wingers to be able to go into the corners, fish out the pucks, do the dirty work, and get him in open space. Let him create an open space, not the other way around. And I think that's what the biggest issue was with him and Malkin. And I just don't see, a spot for him in the lineup. And even, like you mentioned, after the NHL trade deadline, there might be a couple roster spots or lineup spots opening on the Penguins forward side of things. But I would want to see players like a Jonathan Gruden, or maybe even, shot in the dark here. We've only been talking about him all season long. Maybe even the stars align for Sam Poulin for the first time all season, for the first time in his entire career, and he gets an opportunity to make an extended run at the NHL level just to see what you got out of the kid, because that's what you really need going forward. You need to see what you have out of these young players going forward, especially if the directive going into next season from Kyle Dubas is we need to get younger. That's what you got to use the last, 20 games of this season for? We see the Pirates do it every single year. We're trained to know in September, the Pirates bring up their young players. Well, in March this year, the Penguins should bring up their young players to see what they have going towards next season. This season is a wash. I understand that. Valtteri Puustinen shouldn't come out of the lineup the rest of the year. Sam Poulin should get an opportunity. I think Jonathan Gruden is earning himself an extended stay at the NHL level with his physicality a little bit. I mean, he's showing some signs of life in the bottom 6. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be picky about it based on what we've seen all season long. So you're going to see a lot of these younger guys get opportunities. I just don't think Matt Phillips is one of the guys that's going to get them going forward, simply because there's too many other names that can fill those roles that the Penguins have brighter aspirations for in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The thing about Jonathan Gruden is he's definitely earning his role in the NHL lineup, at least for the rest of the season. I just wish he would shoot the puck a little more to really drive things home. And whenever I say shoot the puck a little more, I mean, it's great that you have a 100 shooting percentage in your career.
Yeah. I mean, hey, the Penguins need that. They need players with good shooting percentage, and he is perfect.
But it's based on a one-shot, one-goal situation. And by the way, 10 games played. I don't care what line you're on. You can't have 1 goal in 10 games. So that's over his last 2. So that's over
one shot.
Last season.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 1 shot on goal, and that includes last year too. So remember that. But 7 this year, 3 last year, 1 career shot on goal, and 1 goal. Don't get me wrong. That's a good little sidebar there.
It was a nice goal. Yeah.
But I don't care what line you're on, you've got to provide more than that. Hey, if it is anything, Jonathan Gruden has more goals than Jansen Harkins.
It is something.
Just saying.
I'll say
and
that.
so does Tristan Jarry. So
It is something for sure. Obviously, Jansen Harkins being evaluated for, I believe it was an upper body injury at the end of that game.
Yeah.
But the Penguins, they need to know what they have in these young guys. I think Poulin's the name that I'm going to keep my eye on, especially following the trade deadline. Who knows where Lars Eller goes? Maybe there's a third line center role opening up. Maybe you bring, Poulin up, play him with Puljujarvi, because those two had some chemistry at the American Hockey League level there for a couple of weeks. But I mean, you look at Poulin and his season, he would have been called up probably 2 or maybe even 3 times if it wasn't for poor timing and injuries. He's been struggling with staying healthy this year. He started the season injured with a high ankle sprain. Obviously, there was those injuries to Noel Acciari a couple weeks back, and we thought, all right, it's Poulin's time, but he was brought out of the lineup for another injury. He returns, gets 3 assists in that first game. If you look at his year in total, 23 points, 11 goals, 12 assists in 28 games this season. I want to see what he is at the NHL level, more so than those 3 games at the very beginning of last season, especially going into a year where if you're going to skew younger and you might potentially be trading your third line center in the next 3 days, you need to see if this guy potentially has what it takes to fight for that spot in camp, or if you think you really need to bring in somebody that's going to be that 1A and Poulin's just going to have to outperform him all the way to the top to get that spot to start next season. So I think Poulin's going to be the most interesting name to watch going forward after the trade deadline as far as for next season is concerned.
Yeah, as far as in-house upgrades, as far as who you have to rely on in the future. I couldn't agree more. And I think going into the summer and into next preseason, we'll see what Braden Yeager can bring as well.
Yeah, he's
trying
certainly
to skew younger, guys. Trying to skew younger.
He's certainly performing well in Moose Jaw. I think the door is closed on him making any appearance in professional hockey this year, not only because of the fact that he doesn't have an ELC signed as of right now, but because Moose Jaw is looking pretty good in the WHL. Maybe they go on a Memorial Cup run, and that's exactly what Kyle Dubas said a couple months ago when talking about Yeager, is he wants to see what he can do to take a team to the next level, to take a team through a playoff scenario, and to try to take a team to a championship. So keep an eye on Braden Yeager in the WHL. Probably not going to see him anywhere near either Western or Northeastern Pennsylvania this year, but next year could be an extended timeline, or not extended, but could be a shortened timeline for Yeager, especially if the Penguins are really looking to skew younger next season. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we finish off this episode with a couple over or unders surrounding the Pittsburgh Penguins on this trade deadline week. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. Horwat, the trade deadline is 3 days away, and as we already talked about, Kyle Dubas could get started any moment now. So I figured let's play a little game here. Let's play a little over or under with the Penguins trade deadline week. Let's start with this one. Will the Penguins trade over or under 3.5 players at the NHL's trade deadline this week?
So quickly before I give an answer, are you also including prospects and AHL players?
Roster players. Let's stick with roster players right now.
Just making sure, because that would just immediately have me pound the over. But when it's, and you said 3.5?
3.5 is the number.
It's gotta hit 4. See, because that's where things get iffy. You figure Jake Gensel and Riley Smith are the obvious 1-2 probably out. And then things get iffy. I know Lars Eller's high on a lot of people's lists. I know Alex Nedeljkovic is starting to gain a lot of interest. Rickard Rakell is floating around out there. Mm-hmm. But when it comes down to it, of roster players right now this season, I'm going to go under 4.
Okay, that's fair enough. I'm going to go over. I'm going the opposite of you in this one, because I think, like you said, Jake Gensel to me is a given. He is going to be traded. So you already have the free space on the bingo board with him. I think Lars Eller is right there. Riley Smith has got a lot of attention, but you look at Lars Eller, what his contract is and what he's been able to do, not just for the Penguins this season, but in his history in the NHL playoffs. I think Lars Eller is going to be a hot commodity, especially because that center ice position is always something that people want to add when you're looking at playoff teams and Stanley Cup contenders. So I think Lars Eller is more likely to be gone than not this week. And then I think Alex Nedeljkovic is another name in a similar position. The goaltending market is always finicky, especially around the NHL's trade deadline. A lot of the starter capable guys are coming off the board. Jacob Markstrom is no longer going to be on the move for Calgary, at least is not expected to be on the move. Marc-Andre Fleury is not expected to be on the move. So I think that maybe that's when you start to see these backups get a little bit more shine, get a little bit more attention paid to them. So I think Alex Nedeljkovic is in that camp. And then I just said three names, and then you tack on a guy like Riley Smith, who I just don't see a future with him in Pittsburgh.
No,
I just don't. Whether it's the trade deadline or whether it's during the offseason, I just don't see a future with him in Pittsburgh. And let's not forget, Vegas has a lot of cap space right now because of the injury to Mark Stone going on LTIR. They have over $7 million in salary cap space, and Riley Smith, a little familiar with that Nevada team. So I would go over 3.5 players. I'm glad we're different on the first one, because sometimes we go through these games and we're the same on everything. That gets boring. So a little bit of competition here. At least I know I can beat you out on one thing if there's a lot of action this week from Kyle Dubas. Let's move on to the second one here. The Penguins will receive over or under 4.5 draft picks at this week's deadline.
I could see that one being over, mostly because I could see, I know they want prospects for Gensel, but I could still see at least a couple of picks being part of that return, especially because teams aren't going to want to give up their prospects, period. And Kyle Dubas might not have a choice but to just sort of surrender and take in draft picks. So I'll take an over on that, especially considering when you're in sell mode, you're not usually getting players in return. So you're going to shoot for draft picks on certain trades. Like I bet Nedeljkovic would go just for draft picks.
I'm going to say under for draft picks. Because of that reason that you just mentioned. Let's go. It's going to get interesting here. I'm going to go under for draft picks because, maybe would have said over about a week ago, but that report and the fact that he keeps saying it from Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet and 32 Thoughts, that the Penguins, they want prospects. They won't want picks. And it makes sense because anything you're getting back for a proven NHLer, whether it's Jake Gensel or whether it's Chad Ruhwedel, if you're getting back a draft pick or you're getting back a prospect, you're getting magic beans because you're not usually getting somebody that has NHL experience that is established in the NHL where you know exactly what they're going to be when fully formed. So it's funny money either way, but at least with the prospect, you know the player you're getting, you know what he looks like, you know his strengths, you know his weaknesses. Whereas in a draft, you could be up to the day of the draft before it even starts, and you still have no idea what that pick is or what value that pick carries. So I see why the Penguins, especially in this really, shotgun rebuild that they're looking to make, I can see why they want to skew prospects. And if Jake Gensel is something they want prospects back for, I would imagine that they want B- C+ prospects for a lot of their NHL caliber players. And I say that simply because I don't think many of their other players are going to warrant A or B+ prospects. Just fact of the matter. That's why this team is not in a Stanley Cup playoff contention right now. But I think it aligns with Dubas's plan to not just get younger, but also to kind of make sure this team is not horrible the next 2 or 3 years while Crosby is still playing and still probably playing at a very, very good clip.
Yeah, they're going to look for those high-end prospects. I just feel like when it comes to the trade deadline, some teams are going to be finicky. And it's weird that I went with under 4 trades yet over 5 draft picks. So we'll see how things go.
Yeah, I mean, I could have said the same thing. I'm saying there's a lot of players being traded. I'm saying there's not a lot of draft picks coming back, and sometimes draft picks are thrown around like monopoly money simply because that's really what they are.
Could gain just a ton of 7th round picks and I could nail this. So
yeah, we gotta talk off camera about where do we put conditional picks on this one, like a conditional 7th that could turn into nothing. I don't know. I think that's a line we have to discuss after the podcast, but I think we'll count it. But will there be over or under, the last one here, will there be over or under a half of a 3-team trade involving the Penguins? Basically asking, will the Penguins be involved in a 3-team trade in the next 3 days?
Yeah, I mean, the only player that would most likely, at least, warrant a 3-team trade is Jake Gensel. I mean, maybe someone retains salary on a Riley Smith deal going back to Vegas. But I don't know. And maybe, for what it's worth, considering some of the teams that are in on Jake Gensel, I think Vegas and Vancouver were just sort of decided by Pierre LeBrun as front runners. Let's say Jake Gensel and Riley Smith are a package deal to Vegas. I would assume a third team gets involved then.
Well, yeah,
That's a lot of money going one way.
they have $7 million in cap space, and those two account for $11 million. So you would imagine
Yeah.
somewhere somebody has to retain salary. And we already talked about the Penguins are not really in a great position to retain salary, especially, I mean, I guess on those two, it's not as bad because Gensel's an expiring deal, so it doesn't really make a difference. And one more year of Riley Smith. Smith is where I'm really focusing my answer on for this one. I don't know about Jake Gensel being, somebody that needs to be retained upon. I mean, maybe if he has to go to Carolina, you have to shimmy out a 3-team trade, especially because, it's an indirect trade inside the division. Always helps the optics a little bit for the organization. But I really think it's Riley Smith. I think that he's going to be somebody, like I said, I don't see a future with Riley Smith in Pittsburgh. I just don't see him fitting with this team as early as next season. So I feel like he has to be gone. And the easiest way to move a $5 million contract, especially when there's so few teams that have the salary cap space to even do that, I think it has to be through a 3-team trade. Now, again, Vegas has the cap space to just say, we'll just bring him on because we have $7.5 million. He's worth $5 million. Obviously, they love Riley Smith and he loves Vegas. That much has been, detailed throughout the season. But I think that they're a team that is more than just one piece away. Yeah, they need a piece to replace Mark Stone in the lineup right now, but they're more than one piece away, especially considering how good Colorado is, how good Edmonton is this year, how good Vancouver is, and the arms race that is currently taking place atop the Western Conference standing. So I think they're more than one piece away. So even with that cap space, I feel like Riley Smith to Vegas, if that happens, it's going to have to be mediated through a third team. So I'm going over on this one. And did you officially say that you're going over? I know you mentioned it could be Gensel, it could be Smith.
I'll go over on it because if it's Gensel, there's a lot of most of the teams that are in on Gensel they need to hit pretty much money going out as well. That's why you got to start drawing conclusions about big contracts and maybe coming back to the Penguins in a Jake Gensel deal. If it's Edmonton, look for Cody Ceci. I'm dead serious.
Is he on an expiring?
He's got a year left, but
Oof.
I mean, he has familiarity with Kyle Dubas, and he played well in his one season here. I'm not even kidding when I say look out if Cody Ceci comes back. Play him in the right role, not a bad idea. If it's Vegas, I don't think there needs to be anything because they have Mark Stone on LTIR probably until the playoffs. If it's a team like Carolina,
until the playoffs, that was reported that he's out until at least the playoffs.
Yeah. So if it's Carolina, money coming back again, I don't know what the roster looks like to know who would be coming back. I'd still ride Michael Bunting coming back, get a little piece for next year, but that was a conclusion I was trying to draw before the 41 game mark. So we'll see. I would say, just because I bet, yes, one does happen and likely lands on the Gensel deal.
Yeah. And I honestly think that at this point, if it goes to like a Carolina, it's probably just retained salary. The Penguins probably like, what's the point of us? It's going to drop off at the end of this year anyway. So retain salary, especially if that gets you a little bit more in the way of assets. Maybe it gets you a better prospect. Maybe it gets you an additional prospect. Even if it's not the best prospect, the Penguins, as we've talked about for several years, don't have really anything in the prospect system. You can count on one hand how many prospects you expect to actually be difference makers in the NHL, and you might not even get up to 4 or 5 on that hand. So I think it's going to be an interesting week, obviously. We're both going over on the last one, which is nice. We agree on one thing, Horwat, but the other two things, game on. Game on. And like we said, it could start as early as, by the time this comes out, there honestly could be a trade made by Kyle Dubas. I would not be surprised in the slightest. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Iceberg. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins or anywhere you get your podcasts from.